My name's Jo Wilding. I'm a researcher at the University of Sussex, mainly working on access to legal advice, particularly around immigration and asylum. First, availability. The scope of legal aid is now very limited. Since 2013, it almost only covers asylum. It doesn't even cover refugee family reunion unless you can get exceptional case funding. But even if you're claiming asylum and you're entitled to a legal aid lawyer, there's a massive capacity deficit. For England and Wales, there's a deficit of at least 25,000 between the number of new asylum applications and the number of new legal aid cases opened. So that's at least 45% of main applicants, not including dependents, who can't get a legal aid representative. I say at least because some new cases that legal aid lawyers opened will have been, for example, the settlement application at the end of someone's refugee leave. So the actual deficit is even bigger than that. There are large parts of the UK without any access to legal advice. That includes the whole eastern side of the East of England region, so Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk, plus Lincolnshire. Includes the whole southwest of England below Bristol, apart from two people in Plymouth. The whole of Wales outside the far south, apart from one person in Wrexham. The whole of Northumbria and Cumbria. 100 offices have stopped doing immigration legal aid work since the contracts were given out in September 2018. So that's almost a third of them over 4.5 years. 25 have gone in the last year. And there are more who still have contracts but don't actually do any legal aid work, often because they haven't been able to recruit or to replace a lawyer. Technology doesn't lift that barrier. Firstly, because, as I've said, there are not enough legal aid lawyers anyway. So remote access can only shuffle the capacity and the gaps to different parts of the country. Even if someone can get a device and Wi-Fi or data and a decent connection, it's much more difficult to build trust with a lawyer and interpreter over remote connections, and that takes much longer. And it can create a huge burden on voluntary sector organisations. So in trying to facilitate that remote access, lending a device, a private room, scanning and sending all their documents to the lawyer, dealing with the psychological fallout from the appointment when it's next to impossible for the lawyer to work in a trauma-informed way over a remote connection, even if they're one of the good ones. There are fixed fees for most asylum work, with different fees for the application stage and the appeal stage, and then depending on whether the appeal goes to a hearing or not. The fee is low, and the actual rate of pay hasn't gone up in 20 years. On top of that, there's a huge amount of unpaid administrative work that's involved in doing legal aid work. So some firms cap the amount of work that they'll do on a case at the amount of money that they'll actually be paid for it. You can understand them doing that because otherwise they make financial losses on every single case. But equally, that amount of work would rarely meet the client's needs. More recently, some firms refuse to do appeals work at all because they can't afford to. One wrote to all its existing clients who are waiting for an asylum decision, saying it can't represent them if the case is refused and they need to appeal. Others haven't announced that, but they still drop clients when they get a refusal from the Home Office, not because it's a weak case, but saying that they don't have capacity to do appeals. If you get an asylum refusal, you're entitled to a legal aid lawyer. You definitely need a legal aid lawyer, but given that there's already at least a 45% deficit in provision, you've got no real prospect of finding a new lawyer in 14 days to do your appeal with an unfavourable type of funding. This is not because there are too many people coming into the UK. This is because the system is unworkable. The combination of low fees, high administrative costs, excessive risk placed on providers by the Legal Aid Agency and the Ministry of Justice, and a Home Office system that doesn't work. So huge barriers to access, even for people that are entitled to a legal aid lawyer.